Welcome to another Lumion live stream tutorial. This is Chris Welton from CweltonDesign. In this tutorial, we're going to cover the new fur in Lumion 9. So in another tutorial, I covered a lot of the basics of these new materials in the new 3D grass. The fur is different, but it is very similar. It works very much in the same way, but it has some distinct sliders that we'll jump into. But in general, I recommend watching the grass tutorial first, because I can go into a lot of detail in there that I'm just going to kind of brush over in here. So, really quick, take a look at the scene here too. So, the new 3D fur is definitely a great addition to Lumion 9. In order for some people to get a fur texture, we were seeing people using the environment grass, the landscape grass, which you can see here. If I were to set this as landscape, and basically they were using, I've seen people in the past basically make this grass into fur, right, shrinking all the size and everything, maybe make it a solid color. So needless to say, this has been a great upgrade for those people who really want to get those fur materials for interior scenes. So now we can find the new fur materials really close to where the new 3D grass is. So we go to the nature tab here. This is a 3D grass, and here we have the fur. So Lumion has some pretty good presets to start with. They have some great settings that can be a starting point if you need to customize the color texture below it. But we're also going to talk about some other ways we can customize this fur to get some specific results that we might be looking for. Unlike grass, which just need to look kind of random, maybe a specific pattern we need to have going on. Furs can be very specific, and so a lot of these, just noticing this tree is sitting right there. A lot of these all these new controls let us do a lot of customization to this new fur material. So let's go ahead and apply a fur right here onto this rug. So we go to fur here, and I'm just going to start with this brown fur. So there you have it. There is the new fur. We have a couple sliders here. Very similar to the 3D grass. We have colorization, which in this case it's colored to this way. Let's kind of make it let's make it a blue ourselves for this case. You adjust the colorization slider to get whatever color we need, or we put a new color map here to get some more specific things as well, if we're really trying to get a specific rug we have in mind. So colorization slides just like that, just like all other materials that have a similar slider. And we have a gravity force as well, which we might be able to see in this case. Usually, I'm going to turn bending force down too, and gravity force is what's going to pull it down on the edges here. Like, we can try something on here too, do a different fur. Let's do this rainbow fur. Interesting enough. So gravity force, again, is going to be dependent on the angle in which the material is set up as, or the geometry the material is applied to. It works as you would expect. Gravity, it's going to pull it down. Sometimes you want the furs, the hairs, to stand up on end and be thick, maybe, and sometimes you want to be low, just hang down. And we have a bending force, which kind of thrusts the different hairs in different directions there to kind of help get a more randomized effect, controlling that kind of look. And here we can lengthen as you would expect, and they've definitely adjusted the parameters on the fur versus the grass, so they can get this stuff pretty big and long. So there's plenty of flexibility if you're really trying to get some specific looks, and keep it kind of small there. You can have it come out, have gravity force, make it come down a little bit more. And of course we have our color map, which is right here, the scale, adjusting Pretty simple. If we set it to 0, we get a custom scale. That's kind of interesting. And we'll just go ahead and leave it somewhere around here. And here we have a couple sliders that are kind of interesting when it comes to the sheen and reflectivity, glossiness levels of this specific type of material. I'm going to go on the bottom rug here to really get a good look at this. So the velvet scale is being previewed here, and when it renders it looks a little different as well. But as you can see, it's kind of getting that kind of velvet look, controlling exactly how we want that to kind of reflect in the properties, kind of this distinct properties of the rug and the fur that's on it. This is a slider that's not available on the grass, so it's a little different. Worth playing with. I haven't experimented too much with it. I would again recommend rendering it to see how it kind of looks as well. Everything we're seeing here is in preview. And then roughness, let's see, it's probably working a bit alongside velvet scale. Roughness works the same way as it does in grass, where 0 is kind of the glossier and 1 is not very glossy. So it's just kind of a little play between the two of those to really see how these things will look. Try to get it to mimic the things that we wanted, the real life materials we're looking after, or just what looks best for our scene. As I mentioned before, when you render this material, it will look quite a bit better in difference. So I recommend doing a test render, which we'll do right now. Let's go ahead and increase the fur length a little bit on here. Just gonna go ahead and set a camera path here. There's the camera setup. And let's see if we can get a shot looking at both. So it looks, the fur looks pretty good right here, but it's going to look a lot better when we actually render here. I'm not going to even turn on any settings right now. Just go ahead and do a quick test. And already, you see it right there. It does some sort of anti-aliasing or blurring on the edges. That will depend on your render quality. If you're doing a video, 3-star versus 5-star is going to make a big difference in how many times it renders those edges to give it that soft look. So big difference in what it's previewing here. It's previewing that to make sure your frame rate is nice and high. It's not bogging down your scene. It definitely makes a bigger difference in here than it even does in the grass. The fur has some specific properties that make it render that way, which makes it pretty distinct from the grass. It'd be kind of interesting if you reversed the two of them, or maybe you tried to have did fur for grass and grass for fur, just to see some different specific scenarios. There's really a lot of open-ended options for these materials if you've watched my grass tutorial. We're going to play a little bit with some of those advanced settings as well in here. So I'm going to try a couple things. I'm going to try right now trying to make this thing look extra reflective. Well, actually, I'm going to turn the fur down a lot too. And let's try to get like really reflective and see what we can kind of get in difference-wise in render. Just gonna do another test. Yeah, so you saw how it got a lot darker right there. Let's pull that image up right there. It's always good to kind of compare our renders from the previous and the real-time view we have in Lumion. And get that set up right. So renders a lot darker and obviously softer, like I mentioned. I mean, you don't really have to worry too much about it. Lumion does a good job of rendering this material as it should look. But for those really getting a specific look, like always, I recommend shooting some renders out first before you do that final setup to really see how things are looking. Lots of new effects, lots of new styles and everything that aren't perfectly previewed in here, just for optimization. And so it's always good to shoot out a couple test renders to see how things look. And one thing we can cover really quick, here we'll do it on I'll do it on this one hanging out here, just to take a look at all the presets we were given. Some pretty interesting, that's like a cow looking pattern. Nice brown, other kind of patchy pattern. That rainbow, red, and warm white. So some really good things to start off from. Again, if we want to do our own custom here, let's see, I can jump in and grab maybe our own material. Oh, I don't have anything set up in there. But one thing that's really interesting is what the normal map does to make this fur look kind of the way it does off of this bending force specifically. If you've seen in my 3D grass tutorial, I'll talk about these weird custom normal maps that Lumion has set up in here. And I'm going to go ahead and pull one of those. Now I'm going to actually go into my grass. And so I have some interesting normal maps here. I go into detail a bit on why I think these do what they do in my other tutorial. I just noticed that Lumion had this one set up by default, and so I went ahead and tried my own kind of random color splotches here that are affected in the normal map here by the bending force. It kind of gives it a swirl kind of pattern for different furs if you're looking for a specific look. We have all sorts of options here that I have set up. I shared it on the other video. I can share it here as well. Really, just kind of play with any colors or even black and white images, and you get some different results through this bending force. I mean, there's so many different types of furs, and this is again a topic where some interior designers might be very specific on a type of rug and trying to recreate that in Lumion. The customizability is very open with these new materials. So again, these normal maps don't really work exactly like normal maps. I catch myself saying that, but you can again generate one from the same image. It doesn't seem to do too much. These colors really seem to tell it to do some interesting things. So I recommend playing with some of these different ones if you're looking for just different kind of random. If you're not satisfied with what you're seeing as it is, it's fun to play with some different options in here. Just different colors really bring some interesting options here. Let's change that scale. Another option we could play around with is height maps, where in the color map here, if we have a specific material we've put a height map into the alpha channel of, we could load it in and get some really interesting patterns in the height of these specific hairs. I'll show an example here where I have one that is test. Let's adjust this scale. It's not a perfectly flat plane, so this might not work exactly. I'll change the first size down, adjust the map scale until we start to see our test. It's actually written out a little bigger. Okay, I'll go with that. Oops, let go of it too early. Okay. So as you can see, this black and white image is actually the same. If I undo colorization, we'll see I have the same black and white image in the alpha channel for the height map, where white goes high and black stays down. I have the same thing as the color as well, for convenience in this tutorial. So we have the letters test in white and gradient strip right here with black in the backdrop. So if I adjust the length, you'll get to see the discrepancy better in here. So we can control the heights of our blades of grass. I could of course colorize this so you don't even see any of the any of that black and white image. You can really kind of splays out a lot if you have gravity force down. And the reason I'm showing this with grass, it was to help kind of create some more customization options. There's some pretty interesting things I have in mind for fur specifically, and that has a lot to do with what you could do. Let's try something cool here too. Interesting. What you could do with some specific rugs I've seen where they've actually shaved patterns into the rug. I mean, did not super often used, but we could create that. And that's awesome. I'm really happy that Lumion has given us the freedom to be able to do things like that. So, for example, I don't know the exact term for it, but there are rugs where they'll have an even pattern, an even height, and then they'll actually have a machine that shaves out either floral patterns or whatever patterns you can think of on the edge. We could recreate that texture and actually draw the height map of those patterns in black and as a black and white image in Photoshop, for example, which is where I created something like this. So we'd have the texture sitting on there, and then we have the height maps. Say have the white is high, so maybe you have like a white, and then you draw a black outline with maybe a gradient or something to kind of ramp it up, and the black outline pattern would come in and be recessed, whereas the other ones stick higher, and you'll see that kind of indentation. And I mean, that's the only way I can think of doing that is if you actually modeled all of the grass blades, or in this case fur blades, fur hairs, set up there to recreate that, and it would just be a lot of work. It could all be done with just basically a test of an image. So that kind of about covers it for fur. There's a lot of potential I have not played with much myself. Let me do a quick test render here to kind of look to see how something like this would look. These custom maps here. Test 3. There we go. It just looks a lot better. I mean, granted, that's usually not how rugs look with raised text like that, but I think the idea of Lumion releasing these new materials with so much customization options for people like watching my tutorials who like to take things to another level that most people probably don't. This is awesome. I'm really excited to play or have the opportunity or the need to customize my own rug, my own fur material with all the really cool things we can put into it to kind of make it our own. Otherwise, Lumion has some pretty good starting places with these templates in there. You could just take any one of these and just make it whatever color you want, or load in a custom image. Say, well, this kind of looks like a rug. So there we go. There's our custom rug. Really interesting. And we could even load that as the same norm map. Although that kind of does quite a lot. It's interesting. It really adds a lot of realism and detail to these renders that wasn't really possible before. A lot of other render engines have had fur kind of set up. It's kind of a custom thing they have built for a lot of people doing interiors, and now Lumion has given us this kind of option. Maybe we'll just do an interior setup in here. Lots of other things I can start to play with to make this a render scene, but we'll just do a quick test scene here. Kind of see our final results in the rug. Well, oh, a lot of other things were turned on, going on right there. But anyway, that throw rug right there, just on there with the extra fur on there, adding that texture, that brings so much more life to our scenes than just something that was a material. Great geometry helps a lot. Again, this is I'm going to give credit to the modeler. This was just an example scene I got from SketchUp Texture Club. Full credit to, let's see if his name, it's Claudio Anello. This is where I got this scene, just for a quick test. And so there's kind of a first setup probably with V-Ray there. Anyways, yeah, that about covers it here. There's a lot of this I had covered in the 3D grass, but I wanted to give fur its own kind of space. And I really look forward to seeing some examples of what people are doing with this. Again, take a look at the 3D grass tutorial. I really kind of dive in and try to understand what these things do. And it all applies to grass. They were developed probably together, and the grass had specific needs, and so did fur that kind of separated them, but they work very similarly. And there's just so many things I really haven't yet to play with on this. I look forward to seeing any examples you guys have to share. Feel free to leave any questions in the comments. I hope you were able to kind of learn a little bit more about this fur material, and you're able to take it to other lengths that you didn't expect you could before. That's kind of my goal with this channel, and thanks for watching, and until next time, guys.